And I think one of the elements is that we talk.
Yeah.
And I think just talking creates those friendships that go far beyond just being a neighbor.
Yeah.
Being able to walk up to somebody's house and knock on the door and say, I need to talk to you for just a few minutes. I mean, that's where friendships come in. And you know what doors you can go up and knock on and which doors you don't need to. I mean, you know that. But up and down the street in Plains, I mean, we talk all the time. Today I ran in the cafe to get some lunch, and the postmistress was sitting there, and she said, sit here and talk to me for a little while you wait for your food, And I've known Miss Pat all my life. She's older than me, but we're good friends.
Yes.
And we just sit there and talk. And I think, of course, it goes back to communication, but the talking, just sitting there. And I wanted my children to grow up like that, and they have. So Miss Carol's one of my best friends. She's also one of my son's best friends.
Welcome to the Americus Podcast, where we pursue what it means to become a next level neighbor, creating a place we enjoy with the people we love. Today, I am joined by Kim Carter Fuller. Kim is the executive director at Friends of Jimmy Carter National History Site. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on the podcast, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I would love to know what's kind of filling up your calendar right now, and what are you looking forward to in 2024?
Right now, with the Friends of Jimmy Carter, we have a Carter Historical Auction coming up in May.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm working on right now. And then I jumped from there to a barbecue and pizza cook-off and fireworks. And then I jumped from there to Butterfly Day. So every month, it seems as if from now until December, we have something going on, which involves the entire community.
That's great. And are these annual events as well?
The auction is like every 3 years, but everything else is an annual event.
Okay.
Yes.
And are they pretty much equal as far as the time and effort, or are there ones that are a little bit more heavier?
Ooh, the Peanut Festival is in September, and that's the biggie.
Okay.
That takes more effort than anything else. This auction is taking a lot right now because the last one they had before the pandemic, I was not involved in the planning. Okay. So I'm learning that. So, but everything else takes just a lot of time, volunteer-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that me and my wife, when we moved into Americus about 2 years ago, one of the things that we really have enjoyed the last 2 summers is actually going to Plains, making several trips to Plains, to go to the Plains pool, and also to go to the store for, the famous peanut butter ice cream. And so my kids think about it all the time. We do homeschooling, so we get a lot of time to finish school and then just go and enjoy Plains. And so there's just so much there. And so thank you all so much for putting forth effort and energy to making Plains an enjoyable thing, even for my kids. So,
good. I mean, it takes, like you say, it takes a village sometimes, and Plains has that. We all work together. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. So I would assume you would know the Plains pool as well. This one.
I grew up at the Plains pool. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. I was growing up during the time when we would be in front of the gate at 1:00 waiting to go in. But it only cost, we didn't even have to pay, and we put our quarters up at the counter because they had food, back then.
Wow.
We had a jukebox. We had all kinds of stuff. It was so much fun. So I grew up at the Plains pool.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have really, really enjoyed it. So I love, like I said, I know that you have people that probably email, call, text, come from all over the world at times to Plains, to Sumter County. How do you describe Sumter County to people that have never been here?
One thing that I say about Sumter County is that you can do just about anything you want to in Sumter County. You can go from Andersonville and study about the prison there, and then you can go to Plains and study about a president, and all in between, you can study about the crops. You can come to Americus, and you've got the Windsor, and you've got the Rhinelander, and you've got all this stuff that you can do. So if you come to Sumter County, like on a vacation, you can't go away saying there was nothing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just can't.
That's really good. Well, one of the things that I've noticed about you as well is that you're born and raised here in Sumter County in Plains.
Yeah.
And you've made mention of just loving to stay here, loving to be here, continuing to invest into this community. What drives you to do that?
Because I'm proud of it. And I want people to know what we have to offer, not just in Sumter County, but especially in Plains. I mean, I have ties there. I left and went to college and came right back. I've taught school here, and I love it when I see the children that I taught coming back to invest themselves in the community. And I've seen a lot of that. And I love it. And I think it's important for all of us who live in this area to be reminded that we are part of a much bigger legacy than we realize. Because in some way, shape, or form, we've touched the legacy of President and Mrs. Carter. And I know that people go, well, Sumter County isn't all President and Mrs. Carter, and that's right. But all of us are a part of that story.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really great. So kind of growing up, were you an introvert, extrovert? What kind of personality did you see yourself?
Well, I was very bookish.
Okay.
And I still read all the time. But I was a theater and English major in college. So I was always wanting to be on stage.
Okay.
So I guess I was kind of a mixture of both, because I was very content sitting up under a tree in the yard reading all the time, yet I liked being on stage at the same time. So I had lots of really close friends, so I think I was a mixture of both.
So you were a teacher for 31 years?
31 and a half.
31 and a half
Don't forget
years.
the half.
That's right. A half, right? Did you know that you were going to be a teacher growing up? Is that what your thoughts?
No. I was going to be on the stage.
Okay.
I was going to be on the stage. And very quickly realized that being a theater major in South Georgia was not going to get me very far. I was going to have to go somewhere else. So what I did was, reluctantly to begin with, I said, okay, I'll get that education degree also, and then fell in love with it. So I taught theater and English. So I have an English degree also, and stayed pretty much in the area, and loved it. I was able to do both. So.
Yeah. Did you have anybody that you really enjoyed working with and acting with in any of the plays, or do you remember a specific play that you just really enjoyed?
You talking about throughout? Well, years ago, we did a folk play called If These Sidewalks Could Talk.
Okay.
And I wrote it, and we did it for about 15 years in Plains. And that's probably the most fun, because what would and we're talking about neighbors and community, but the people in Plains all throughout the year would give me stories. Okay, Kim, we need to do this, or we need to do that.
That's fun.
We started out doing the campaign years, and then we went from there to when we all went to Washington, and then we just started telling stories. And it was so much fun, because some of the now I'm one of the older people now in Plains, but back then, some of the older people in Plains who had never done anything like that before would say, okay, I'm going to do it this year. Here's my story. And growing up around these people, I didn't know their backgrounds, because they were just people that I knew. But they started telling their stories, and we just put them on stage, and it was wonderful.
I love that.
It was wonderful.
I love that. Yeah. So did you know exactly where you wanted to go to college? And then where did you end up?
I went to Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in Tifton. And at that time, it was a true junior college. So I stayed there for 2 years. And then I was accepted at the University of Georgia, but my mama decided to have another baby. So I was afraid that if I went to Athens, that the baby would not know me. So I came to Georgia Southwestern. Because there's 6 of us in our family, and we were close, so I didn't want to be that far away. So but it was fine. I loved staying here. I met my future husband here, and so I wouldn't have met him if I'd gone to Athens.
See, there it is. There it is. So when you got back here, started investing, got to be a teacher. You were a teacher for English, correct?
English and theater.
English and theater. Okay. And what was it? What was it like? What did you enjoy about teaching?
Oh, the students. I mean, I taught 11th and 12th grade primarily, 9th and 10th some years, but primarily 11th and 12th. And I just loved those kids coming into my room and getting to know them. And I was talking about a group of kids the other day with somebody else. And I said, do you remember how when they graduated, we just really didn't know what was going to happen to them? and she said, yeah. And they've turned into, they've done their careers and have just, that group has probably done, we got 2 preachers in there,
Yeah,
so they've probably done more with their lives than a lot of the other ones have done. Yeah. But I just love the teaching and that just being with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So 31 and a half years, when did you know that, all right, this is the final year, or was it a process?
It was a process. At 31 years, I knew it was time. And so I retired and then went back for half a year, 49%. And I tell everybody, I'm not ashamed to say this, I knew the day the students walked in that I should have retired. My heart wasn't in it. And, when you teach, if your heart's not in it, you don't need to be in it.
Yeah.
And I put everything I had into those kids, and I just didn't have any more to put into them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that they, like you said, I mean, it's sometimes, I heard this phrase, a lot of people won't remember what you said, but they will remember who you were.
Yeah.
And so that attitude, right? The consistency, the love, the care. I don't remember what she said, but I remember who she was, and that impacted my life, And so I think that coming into it, like you said, just having your heart there was definitely beneficial for people that maybe have felt disconnected relationally, or maybe even it just helped to fuel relationships with other students. And so, and what school was that in particular?
I started out in Lee County.
Okay.
And then I went to Tri-County, which is no longer here.
Yes. I graduated from Tri-County.
No way.
2003.
Are you serious?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you were in elementary school when I was there then. Oh, no, I left Tri-County in 2000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2000.
Wow.
And went to, no, back up. Sorry.
Okay.
I left Sumter County in 2000. I left Tri-County 1988.
Okay.
Yeah, so see, that was a little bit.
Yes.
And so then went to Sumter and then retired from Sly County. So see, I stayed right here.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the time, Sly had taken back their charter from Tri-County. So I taught when the high school came back to Sly.
Okay.
I was in that first group of teachers.
Okay. That's great.
Do you remember Larry Stubbs from Tri-County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, he recruited me for Sly County.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yes. I was there. I think that kind of, I think Sly County broke off from Tri-County around 2000, 2001, somewhere around in there. And then I graduated 2003. And then I think later on, maybe a few years later, they just kind of found their own little, counties, which was great. And so, but yeah, so I had some really great years at Tri-County. So after you retire, I know that right now you're the executive director of Friends of Jimmy Carter. Was that already happening, and did you join up with that, or did you help start that? What is that story?
Okay. I taught at the college for a while and then taught literacy classes at South Georgia Tech and did some things.
Okay.
But the Friends of Jimmy Carter was being formed, and Uncle Jimmy wanted family to be on the board. He and my aunt were both on the board. But he came to me and said, okay, we're getting this board together. Will you be chairman of the board? And you don't tell him no. So I said, of course, I will. And so I was still at South Georgia Tech at the time working. And then it got to the point where we were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I went to him and I said, y'all are going to have to open an office and you're going to have a director because I don't have time to do this anymore. Yeah. And I said, let me do it because I was ready to be in Plains all the time.
Yeah, okay.
And so I became the director then, and then that was in 2015. So it's been a while now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, recognizing, like you said, that this is, you've already said it, that we've all kind of been affected by President Jimmy Carter, and his influence and the value that he brought to this community. And so I love the fact that you're a part of the family and you want to continue to share that story with others.
Oh, yeah.
And so being a part of this seems like that has really helped you to continue to share that story.
Yes.
And so, so growing up, I know that you've shared a little bit on some other platforms. Just kind of growing up, part of that family. What were some things that you really enjoyed about being a part of history like this?
I'm gonna start out by saying none of us really realized we were a part of history. Okay, we really didn't, because we weren't treated any different, and it was just Uncle Jimmy was. I know people go, Kim, you're telling a tale, but I'm not. He was governor. He was a senator. He was governor. My daddy was traveling. Then Uncle Jimmy became president. Grandma went to India. I mean, and that was just the way it was. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, it makes sense. Yes. But of course, I enjoyed being able to. We were able to go places that other people more than likely couldn't go. I mean, we were able to meet people that other people didn't have an opportunity to meet. I never forget, I met John Glenn when Uncle Jimmy was governor, and my grandma was sitting by me, and I couldn't even talk. I mean, my grandma kept saying, Kim, he's just a man. I'm going, but it's John Glenn. He walked on the moon.
Yeah.
Just different things like that. But we never really thought about ourselves being different.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I was talking with someone earlier in the year, and even about the civil rights movement, and that's one of the things they mentioned was we didn't know what we were doing. We were just being ourselves. We were doing the best that we could with what we had, and now history looks back and says they were in the right place at the right time, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what I love is using that as an advantage to point towards things that are good, right, positive, and learning how to connect people to this greater story, which I love. And so that's been an encouraging thing for me as I get a chance to hear a little bit more about your life. So tell me a little bit about what the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site's doing right now. You mentioned some of the programs and things like that, but what's its kind of purpose overall? What are the hopes?
We started out as simply being an auxiliary group to help the Park Service itself.
Okay.
So, for example, we have a teacher at Jimmy Carter National Historic Site, which a lot of people don't realize. We fund her position.
Okay.
We fund field trips. When students come in, and being a former educator, I know how hard it is to fund. You got to take up money, you got to do this. And a lot of kids don't get to go anywhere because you can't do that all the time. But we pay bus drivers, we pay the gas. But right when the pandemic hit, we actually took over the Buffalo Cafe, the Plains Historic Inn and Antique Mall, the community center, and the events.
Okay.
So we took over all of that. So not only do we help to fund programs and projects for the historic site, we also are downtown making sure that things go right in our different areas.
Yeah.
And we do all of the events.
Yeah. So what kind of staff do you have to do that? You're like, me. No.
Me in the office. But then I have a manager of the cafe, I have a manager of the Inn and Antique Mall, and then I have a general manager over both of those.
Okay.
So Tim kind of goes back and forth, and then the other two, and then they have their own staff. We have, the cafe is 11 to 2 during the week, and then on during Monday through Saturday, and then Thursday and Friday night. So we have different people who come in and out. So they're not full time. They're part time.
Yeah.
But then the staff at the Antique Mall is more full time.
Okay. Okay. So do you still have time to do any more writing or plays, or you working on stuff all the time?
Oh, yeah. See, right now we just came off a weekend on the train. We do, Sam Shortline is...
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever ridden it yet.
I've not got a chance to do that yet.
And you got Thomas the Train is coming in June. Okay. I'm going to put that out there so people can hear that. I'm on that train authority too.
Okay.
But we do, it's called Southern Ways and Means. It's a murder mystery that I wrote.
Okay.
And it was very easy because all of my actors ad lib.
Okay.
It's impromptu.
Okay.
And so they just know. So we just came off doing that on Saturday night. Then we have 2 more performances in July and September.
Wow.
So, I tell them who they are and they create a motive. And Lee Kinnaman, the mayor of Americus, dies every time.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. He died. He died on the depot platform Saturday night.
Oh my goodness! And is that promptu? Does he just decide that's no, or that's kind of like your character?
He dies, and then the audience decides who killed him.
Okay.
And see, this is another community thing in Plains because our police chief gets his guys together, and so we have a policeman there. The fire department comes up, and the EMTs come out and cover him up and do all kinds of things. So
I love it. Yeah, we definitely need to be a part of that.
So, it's fun. And
they do it. How many times do they do that a year?
3 times.
3 times a year.
Our next one, I think, is July 6th.
Okay.
But it's fun.
All right. So one of the things that we love to talk about here on the podcast, and it's kind of like the subtitle to Americus Podcast, is neighboring well together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've noticed, I'm 39 years old, and I was right before the internet, social media. Now I'm kind of in the middle of it. I know it's going to surpass me at some point. I'm not going to know what goes where anymore. And I can't keep up with most of the things that are going on. But one of the things that I have noticed, though it's a lot easier to connect with people, it's a lot easier also in a negative way to categorize people without getting a chance to get to know them, which is one of the reasons why this podcast is so important to me, is learning just how to have a conversation, get back to getting a chance to hear about people's lives and their values, their heart, instead of just assigning motives and assigning this is who you are. We're learning how to ask better questions and just getting a chance to get to know one another. And one of the things that I thought about when I was listening to your story was just you shared a lot about having friends that were just always there for you, that fought for you just as a person, loved your family. And I think that is so key. And I think that friendships feel like they're getting a little bit harder sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Again, because there feels like there's so many options for friends that you don't know what's a true friend. How does that work anymore? And so just getting back to the basics, I think, is very helpful. So I would love to hear, just in light of that, you've had some great neighbors, some good schoolmates that you've talked about, coworkers. What does it take to be a good neighbor?
I think one of the main things it takes to be a good neighbor is communication. I think communication is a key. I know that's a trite way to say it, but I think it's the truth. You have to learn how to communicate. And I agree with what you say. In today's society, we're really bad about going, okay, I saw what you put on social media, so I don't think I want to be your friend. I don't think I like the kind of person you are when you don't really know them. So I think it takes communication and sitting down with somebody and finding out. I know just in recently, the last 6 months or so, and I can think of a particular person right now that somebody I knew didn't really like them. So, well, if they don't like them, then they're my friend. Why do I need to like, that kind of thing. And I've really gotten to know that person recently. And I'm thinking, Kim, that was not right. You should not have felt that way. But sometimes we just see the front of someone and we don't look behind their eyes and really. So I think communication is a big key to being a good neighbor. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. I've said it a few times on this podcast. I didn't coin this phrase, but I love it. And it's, you can either make a point or you can make a difference.
Oh yeah. I like that.
And that's been really helpful for me because social media does that really well. It just makes points like, hey, this. But being able to get a chance to, again, get to the root, maybe some values. And what we'll find, what I've found more than likely is we actually agree on a lot of the same values. We just have a different way that we think that it could happen. And so, but all we hear is this or this, and we go, well, I don't like this person because this. But if you actually get a chance to hear from them, you're like, wow, we're a lot more in common than you just want to go this way and I want to go that way, but we care about the same thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter which way you want to go, as long as we can meet in the middle every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned that the older I've gotten.
So communication is definitely key. And that, again, that takes time because you have to ask good questions. You have to be open and vulnerable yourself, right? So that's a value of vulnerability, risk taking. You got to be okay. Also, I've noticed you have to be okay with maybe awkwardness or disagreements. You have to just kind of sit in that. And that's really hard too.
It's really hard.
Because you're like, I don't know if I agree with you. And so now I don't know how I feel.
Yeah. And see, my problem is a lot of times I just kind of just shut down. I'm going, okay, I don't know how I feel, so I'm just not going to say anything at all.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't, and I've lost out on some things because of that, if I'm honest. I really have. I've lost out on some really good friendships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm bad sometimes, and I think we all are to a certain degree. Well, you know, Kim, so-and-so said so-and-so about such and such about you. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I trust that person, and I'm going, okay, well, I'm just going to shut myself down and not pay any attention to her.
Yep.
And that's communication and not getting to know the person.
Absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely. So I've tried to get better at, again, when I say asking good questions, it's more of the why behind that. So taking the initial hit and then saying, why is that so important to you? Even if I completely disagree, because I'm wanting to get to know where you're coming from, because probably we'll agree down here at more of a root cause. And so, but that's just really hard. And so I think definitely communication is really key. Active listening, that's been very helpful for me. Repeating what people actually say and say, is this what you actually said? Because this is what I'm hearing. Is this what you said? So, communication is so important. To good neighboring. One of the, also what I love about small towns and maybe just the values of small towns is how neighbors do a really great time during difficult seasons of people's lives with illnesses or emergencies. So how have you noticed neighbors supporting you or how you support others in illness and emergencies that's helpful?
You're exactly right. We're at our best when, I think, in small towns, when something has affected our people. You know, I have a very, very close friend who lost her son several years ago. And I'm not saying it destroyed our town, but it was just like, we all lost him, you know, and just the love and the wanting to put your arms around each other. It just struck me. This is what I want in my life. I want to live in a place where people are going to put their arms around me when they know. When Aunt Rosalind passed away back in November, we all just. It was not a shock. But it was like, oh no, it's really happened, and everybody in town just kind of closed in around each other because we had the entire world looking. You know, it was like they were looking over our shoulders trying to see how we were going to react. And I had some news, you know, over the years. Several of us, we've become friends with people in the media. And you know, I had some of them say, Kim, y'all reacted the way we knew you were going to react. You all just kind of came together, and that's the beauty in a small community. Not to say that in a big city you don't have that. You do, because you've got. But in a small town like we are, it's just like you just kind of close ranks. And you're there to comfort each other. Yeah,
absolutely. And what's great too is, people will do things for you without them even asking. Like they'll bring you food, because if they say, hey, would you like a meal tonight? You're probably going to say no. And so they're just going to come and bring it for you anyway. If you want to put it in the freezer, put it in the refrigerator, you figure it out. But people, like you said, they just take action and they try to figure out. I know when my mother's when my wife's father passed away, people just came and helped us clean up the house. I mean, we didn't ask them for that. I would have never even thought about that of like, oh, that would be a helpful thing for us right now. And they just came and just helped us move some things and cleaned up. And that's that idea of neighboring and coming around one another.
I'll always remember when my grandmama passed away, this was my mother's mother, and I was still in school. I was young, very young. But I'll always remember a woman from Plains who's still living today, who's one of my bestest friends.
Love it.
And she brought those little, you don't remember these, those little tiny Coca-Colas in the bottle. We didn't have cans back then. Okay. Those little tiny Coca-Colas. And she brought them just for us children. Wow. And she said, I don't want anybody else to drink these, just y'all. Because in my family, we didn't get little tiny Coca-Colas. They cost too much money. So we didn't get them. And Miss Carol, and I'll always remember that she took the time to remember that my granny dying affected all of us too, you know, and I don't know.
I love that.
That's just the kind of things you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, even in addition to caring for one another, you know, there's the idea of neighbors, and then there's like this friendship that comes out of that, where it's not just neighbor, where you're kind of being cordial. It really becomes a friendship. And I don't know what the elements are. Maybe it's just consistency over time, just communication, getting to build. But what are some other elements that help even take from just a neighboring to we're friends, maybe even become best friends at some point?
You know what? That's a hard question to answer, because growing up the way I did, most of my neighbors were the people I grew up with, you know. And well, I'm just going to use Miss Carol as an example. Excuse me. She's an older woman. She has children close to my age, but over time, she's become one of my best friends. And I think one of the elements is that we talk. Yeah. You know, and I think just talking creates those friendships that go far beyond just being a neighbor.
Yeah.
Being able to walk up to somebody's house and knock on the door and say, I need to talk to you for just a few minutes. I mean, you know, that's where friendships come in. And you know what doors you can go up and knock on and which doors you don't need to. I mean, you know that. But up and down the street in Plains, I mean, you know, we talk all the time. Today I ran in the cafe to get some lunch, and the postmistress was sitting there, and she said, sit here and talk to me for a little while you wait for your food, you know. And I've known Miss Pat all my life. She's older than me, but we're good friends.
Yes.
And we just sit there and talk. And I think, of course, it goes back to communication, but the talk and just sitting there. And I wanted my children to grow up like that, and they have. So Miss Carol's one of my best friends. She's also one of my son's best friends. Wow. You know?
Yeah.
So
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I think that reminds me of just, you know, making time for people.
Yes,
because time is valuable, right? I know people that are wealthy that don't have, they would rather give money than give their time, because their time is actually more valuable to them than the money that they've had, because they understand that. Like, they got to a place where, like, money's not everything. Time is something I can't get back. And so you making time for people to have conversations, I think does build that. And then I think there's that, like you said, that consistent trust. Like, I trust you. I'm telling you something, and I know that you're hearing me. I know that you're not necessarily going behind my back, or, you know, like, we're building trust with one another. And so making time, trust, communicating. I mean, these are things that we need to get back to more and more, especially in our day and age where there's so many things to do.
Oh yeah,
and there's so many things that can distract us, and so trying to make sure that we make that make that effort.
Well, you know, I live in an older home in Plains, and I have a big front porch, and I grew up sitting on front porches, and this is trite here again, but people don't do that much anymore. I love sitting on my porch, and I'm probably nosy trying to see who's doing what. No, you know, still, when you're sitting on a front porch in Plains, and you see, especially this time of year, and you see people walk, you're going to stop and talk.
Yeah.
whether whether it's because they have a dog that you want to see or whatever, you're going to stop and talk. And I think the simplicity of living in a small town a lot of times, because you're right, there's so many things to do. People just don't sit on the porch anymore.
That's right. I can't remember. I think someone actually did research on a particular year or a decade where that actually changed, that they started building houses with back porches instead of front porches.
Really? Okay.
Because it kind of had that symbol of like, well, I want to be outside, but I don't want people to see me. I'm going to be in the back, And so, having these older homes that represent, hey, we're open. Like, just come to my front porch. If I don't know you, you can come up to my front porch. Maybe not my house, but you can definitely come to my front porch. We can talk, and I love that. I mean, that's symbolic of this neighboring that we're talking about. And so, well, what's I love also thinking through. I mean, you were born and raised in Plains. You've seen Plains develop and evolve over the years. How can neighbors work together or people work together for change over time as well?
I think that, for example, in Plains or Sumter County, to change over time is hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. It's hard to admit that you need to change, It's so what we have to do is we have to commit ourselves to knowing that change is not bad, that let's take it in increments. And sometimes we just have to break down that change and just take it in increments. And once again, talk about it and go to somebody who's experienced the same thing. I'm a big believer in talking to people who've been through something that I've not been through yet.
Okay.
But that I know maybe I'm going to. In Plains, I grew up when Saturday night was the night everybody came to town to buy the groceries. I grew up looking out my granny's door or windows and seeing horse and not buggies, but wagons tied up downtown.
Okay.
Because farmers had come in from town. That's how I grew up. We don't do that anymore, of course. But in Plains, we had to change so much when Uncle Jimmy ran for office and went into office, because we had all these people coming from all over the world to see how we lived. And today we still have people say, oh my gosh, this is just like a microcosm of just a little tiny area in the world. And it really is. And it's hard not to say, you just don't know how we've changed. We have a Dollar General.
Yeah.
And there were people in town that thought, oh my gosh, a Dollar General is coming to town. It's going to ruin the town. Well, it's like Walmart now. We've got a place to go. But change is not bad. And sometimes we have to convince ourselves of that. And we know that down the road, when President Carter's not there with us anymore, that we're probably going to change even more. Right now, all we're trying to do is to keep his legacy alive and have full stores up and down the street.
Yeah.
I mean, but change is hard.
Yeah. I often read leadership books, and one of the things that it says is change is hard, especially for leaders.
Exactly.
Because
because
leaders are always making the change because they have the vision, but then when they're asked to change, they're like, this is hard. Because and now we're feeling the impact of what other people feel when we make changes as leaders.
Oh, I know.
So it's a good reminder of, hey, that's what you want other people to do.
And how many times have I heard, we don't do it like that. That's not the way we want it done. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If that's not the way it's done, maybe we need to look at it a different way.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I'm trying to learn more is, when we're talking about change, sometimes we get mixed up a little bit. Maybe we're thinking too holistically, where we don't really want to change the message, but we definitely might want to change the method.
Yes.
And so how do we do that well? How do we keep the value of Sumter County Plains Americus but changing how it's communicated by making those particular changes. And I feel like that might be more acceptable in a sense of like moving together. I don't know.
Well, I think you're right. But to change our methods, we got to do our research on how to change the methods and what the methods need to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that communication breaks down a lot of times because Americans may feel that this is the way they think change needs to be.
Yep.
And then Plains may be on the totally different wavelength.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want it that way. I know there's been some talk about maybe a new convenience store coming to Plains and people have been talking about it up and down Main Street. Well, we don't want that because we don't know who it's going to be and we don't know how they're going to do it. Well, and right now, I firmly don't think the people have used the correct method to give it to them. They've just presented a plan.
Yeah.
And the person presenting the plan didn't present the plan. Somebody else did.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that. I think you have to do your research on the methods.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because what's great about towns, and I think why towns, and when I say, I'm using the word thrive here, because thriving could still stay small, right? Thriving doesn't mean growing and getting really big. It just means being healthy, right? So thriving. I think that when I've noticed towns and cities that are thriving, it's because they found their niche and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
But again, it's about the values that make them who they are, and then just continuing to tell that story in different ways. And so I think that's a great place. And I think that you guys are doing a great job in doing that through all the things that you've done and with these events that just constantly are just telling the story over and over again.
And that's what we're trying to do. And one thing that all of us in Plains, we're telling the story of President and Mrs. Carter. I mean, we're telling we're showing people their legacy. Plains is part of their legacy. We're all part of their legacy. But in doing that, we're sharing the story of Plains.
That's right.
We're sharing the story, and we're all trying our best to do it.
Yeah.
Whether that method is correct or not, but we're trying our best.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do is try your best. And that's the same thing with thriving communities or Sumter County in general.
Yes.
You try your best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about working together, right? But there's sometimes where we have conflict with one another. So how do good neighbors handle conflict?
They don't look at Facebook. They don't look at Facebook.
Yeah, don't start there.
Right. Don't do that. That's a hard question to answer. I think a lot of times that, and we've talked a little bit about this, that people have misconceptions of each other, misconceptions of how the communities are supposed to look, misconceptions about the people who live in those communities. And I think and I'm talking about myself in general, I think what we do a lot of times is we look at what we want to see rather than what we should be seeing. And hopefully we can work through that. But once again, you have to do the research on what you want, what you should be seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and I'm going to be honest, that Plains has faced her share of miscommunication and conflict over the years. You've got people who've, said, I don't like anybody in the Carter family. Nobody in the Carter family is a good person. From President Carter to his brother. His brother was just a drunk, and also all of his children must be, and all this. And I'm being facetious, but I'm just saying. And you'd be surprised at the people of the world or in our community, even who that's all they see. They see Uncle Jimmy as a Democrat, and Democrats are all bad. So you see that, and then you see my daddy, he was an alcoholic, so that's horrible. And then they say, so everybody in the town must be like that. So the Carters have been there all these years. But I actually had somebody not too long ago tell me that, and once again, I listened to somebody and probably shouldn't have, that a comment's been made that we're all really afraid that once President Carter passes away, that we're going to all lose our value in Plains, that we won't have value anymore. I don't know what value they're talking about. And I think that's a misconception, a big misconception. We have to, as people and as people who need to work together, we have to do our research on each other, and we have to really search our hearts about how we're going to react to other people.
Yeah.
And Plains is she's a little misunderstood place sometimes. But I can tell you, the people there, we are trying our best to do what we think is right.
Yeah.
And we keep saying the legacy of President and Mrs. Carter, but you look at that legacy. You look what they've done.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying. It seems to me, in a sense, that, that President Jimmy Carter, Rosalind, was a byproduct of Plains, and then at the same time, Plains is also a byproduct of them.
Exactly.
So it's this beautiful story of, this is what Plains produces. This is something that's good. People that love people, serve people, are there for people, and that's what you're talking about. This legacy is a state of values. That's why it doesn't go away. Once there is a passing of President Jimmy Carter, because it's always been there.
Exactly. It's always been there, and it's going to keep going because our children are going to continue it. Our community's children are going to continue. And hopefully one day they're going to look back and they're going to go, well, I'm just going to use this as an example. I know you're probably going to go, you're going to cut most of this, I know. But anyway, I'm just going to say that when I taught school, especially in Sumter County, I taught at the old Sumter County Comprehensive High School. And when I taught school, those kids had opportunities because of Uncle Jimmy that normal high school kids didn't have. I had several who were able to interview him, several who were able to go to things in Plains because I had an opportunity to get them there, and they'd walk in, well, how's Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Rosalind today? And they owned them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so as a community, it's like we own them. They belong to us, whether they want to or not.
Yeah.
But they belong to us, and we want to make sure, as long as we can, that the world knows that they belong to us and this community. They belong to this community.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep going with it.
Yeah. I love that. And I think, to sum up just this part too of, what does it look like to have a thriving rural community? We're talking about these values that are going to live out throughout that legacy.
Yeah.
So I know we've already kind of hit on a few of them, but maybe just to summarize, what are some of those ingredients, values that make this legacy that's going to continue on?
I think humanitarianism is going to keep going. I think the values of walking, when you say something. When Uncle Jimmy said something, he did it. He walked the walk, so to speak. I think that's a very strong value, a value of the values that community is important, your background is important, that every single person has his or her own story, and don't ever be ashamed of your story. It doesn't matter. And Uncle Jimmy, he taught us, as children, you believe, you hold on to your story. Don't let your story go. My grandma Carter, she turned 70 in India in the Peace Corps. What better story than that?
Yeah.
But my grandmama taught us that. She said, don't ever be afraid to have a piece of your story. Don't ever be afraid to share it with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's a value. And I think as in Sumter County that DeSoto, Leslie, Andersonville, Plains, Americas, we all have a piece of that story of Sumter County. And Sumter County would not be complete if each one of us, if Andersonville didn't exist, Plains, Leslie, the story wouldn't be complete.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad sometimes that people in the different communities at times don't own their own stories. They'd rather listen to the bad that's going on than owning. And that bad is part of your story. Our Sunday school lesson yesterday, part of it, our author said, you can't have your own story without the bad stuff. God never expected us just to have the good stuff, even though we want it.
Yeah.
That bad stuff's part of you too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to own.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think if we're not addressing the root causes, then we're not going to get to flourishing. We're really not going to be able to do that. But at the same time, that's what you own as a community.
Yeah.
You're not trying to express that to others that don't understand.
Right.
Right. And so, going to social media and things like that, people don't know the history of this community. Right. And so all they're hearing is these difficult things. Well, that's ours. We own that. We want that.
Yeah.
But what we also want people to understand is despite those things, we're working through those things because family is messy. It's always going to be messy because that's what family is, right? Communities can be messy, but we want to put our best foot forward all the time. And we want people to know there's still good here, and we want people to continue to invest here.
Yeah.
And we're going to be messy like every other community.
We are. When you said that, it just reminded me, I will never, ever forget the day that Uncle Jimmy came home from the White House. He had lost the election. He came home. And you're very young, but this part about, that once Uncle Jimmy left Washington, the hostages were released. They were released. And we had all, no more than he did, had all lived through that, the hostages. And I will never, ever forget, we were all down at my daddy's service station, and I'm going to say this, selling beer for $5 a can because there were a lot of people in Plains and they were buying it. So we made a lot of money that day. But the phone rang on the wall. It was the old phones rang. And my husband, somebody answered it, and it was for Daddy. And Daddy went over there, and all I could hear him say was, "It's okay, it's okay. Just come home. It's okay. Everybody's here. Just, it's okay, it's okay." And he hung up, and he turned around. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is community, because communities are family. He turned around, he said, "They just released the hostages." And it was Uncle Jimmy on Air Force One. Who did he call? He called his brother to say, "They just released them. What am I going to do?" And Daddy said, "Just come home." Because we all knew that once Uncle Jimmy got home again, it wasn't going to make it any better. But he had people there who were going to put their arms around him because they loved him. And that's what communities do. And that's what Sumter County can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always I know, again, as a leader, you're always kind of looking a little bit into the future. You can't predict everything, but you definitely want to kind of see, okay, what do we think is going to come in the next 5 to 10 years? What are some things that you're hopeful for the future of Sumter County?
One thing that is on our minds all the time, of course, is I'm hoping that people are still going to come to Sumter County. Right now, we know, if we're honest, people come to Sumter County to go to Andersonville. They come to Sumter County to come to Plains. And then they're able to see everything else we have. Once, of course, Aunt Rosalind's already gone, but once Uncle Jimmy's gone, are people going to say, "Well, it's not worth it to go to Sumter County. I don't want to just go to a sleepy little town"? Or are they going to keep coming because of the history and the legacy? So what I'm hoping is that we tell our story so well that people want to just keep coming. Of course, Uncle Jim and Aunt Rosalyn will both be, she's already been, and he will be too, buried right there in Plains at their home. And they did that so that people would come to Plains. They could have been buried wherever they wanted to be buried. They did that so they can come to Plains. And sooner or later than sooner, hopefully, it'll be opened up so that people can look. I'm hoping that people are still going to want to come. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking in Plains. I'm looking that all our stores the storefronts are going to stay open, that we're going to still be viable. I'm also hoping that all of our small towns, Americus included, can be more closely knit. I'm thinking that maybe that's in our future.
Yeah.
Because sometimes right now we're kind of scattered to the wind at times.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for that.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And I think like you said, putting forth the story, making it as clear and as inviting as possible for others. I think that's what we want to do, even for ourselves as individuals, is presenting ourselves in a way that people will want to get a chance to hear our stories, and so I think, what would that look like? If that's the future, if that's what we want, that's what we're hopeful for, what are some things that we can do as individuals that could help us in that, to see that future come to reality?
I think that one thing that we need to do is accept all the differences that we have in our areas. Just accept ourselves and accept other people. And we need to realize that my story is different from so-and-so's story, and her story is different from his, and his is different. And realize that all of those stories make us who we are. And we've got to learn how to accept each other better. And you said something earlier, we're never going to agree with each other all the time.
Yeah.
We're not. And that's okay. We just have to agree long enough to put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up, we kind of like to do what we call like rapid fire questions. Okay. This is actually, it's in our category of rapid fire questions, but it is more of a deeper question. The other ones will be a lot less, probably heavy on that end. But I love to ask the question, and I'll ask a few of these questions actually, but what are some common misconceptions about you as a person?
Common misconceptions about me. Well, I think the biggest misconception, as far as not my family, but other people, is that I think that I can get things, I think that my word is the last word on things. Lately, I've had some people think that I stopped projects or whatever, when I didn't. I may not have agreed with the project, but I wasn't the last word. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have of me, that I'm the last word on some things, and I'm really not.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes it, and that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's one of the main things.
Okay. Well, I know you've had a lot of conversations about your life. People have asked you about your life. What's a question that you're surprised you haven't been asked?
Ooh, a question that I haven't been asked. Oh, I've never had anybody ask me how I felt growing up as a Carter. I've never had anybody ask me that.
Wow.
I've had people tell me how I felt, but I've never had anybody really ask me, I've had people ask me, how did it feel? But I've never had anybody ask me, how did you feel?
Yeah.
And there's a difference,
Yeah. It's a great question. Someone should ask you that question. I got a question for you. How did it feel to be part of the Carter family?
How did it feel to be part of the Carter family?
You.
Me. How did it feel for me to be part of the Carter family? All right. Sometimes it felt very intimidating for me to be part of the Carter family, because there are a lot of high achievers in the Carter family. And growing up, at times I felt that I would never, ever achieve what some of the adults felt that I should. Like I've already shared with you, I was a book person. Now, my daddy was too. I mean, most of us are book people. Uncle Jimmy is a book person. I think that's one of the things that when he first started, his health started failing, it was hard for him to hold a book. So he was listening to books and things. So I lived in books a lot.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I felt that I was intimidated. I also felt sometimes that I just wasn't going to measure up. And I'm going to say this. I felt sometimes that when I became a teacher that there was a lot of disappointment that I didn't do something else, And I did have, Uncle Jimmy did tell me one time when I was all grown up, like about 10 years ago, he said, I never realized what becoming a teacher was going to do for you. And that was just some of the highest praise.
Yeah.
And my daddy had kind of said that before he passed away, but, and that was very high praise.
Yeah.
So it wasn't bad for me growing up as a Carter. But there were times, it wasn't all fun and games all the time.
Yeah.
So
I would assume some unspoken expectations, or
yeah,
even whether they were real or not, they were just there.
They were there. And you said you listened to my TED Talk. So, some of the things that I said, of course, my daddy was an alcoholic. And I was telling somebody this the other day who was going through some things. I said, he was always my daddy, and I loved him very much. He was an alcoholic. He was a very famous alcoholic. But sometimes, for me, did he embarrass me? Yes. Was I embarrassed? A lot? Yes. But at the end of the day, he was always my daddy. And not a lot of people asked me that. All they saw was the drinking and, Kim, they never asked me how it felt loving my daddy as much as I did and him being an alcoholic. They never asked me that. Not many people have ever asked me that.
Yeah.
So that being said, I sound like it was terrible growing up. No, it wasn't. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's it's encouraging to me to, like I said, if we're not asking the right questions, sometimes we really just miss the mark.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of things. So I did want to ask you this. What question do you not like being asked?
Let's see.
And I won't ask it, I promise.
Okay, please don't. Let me see. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't think of a single one.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
I'm okay,
All right.
I think.
That's right. That's right. Well, if it comes up, we'll...
okay, yeah. I'll go, don't ask me
that's
that.
right. That's right. All right. All right. So a few other real rapid fire questions. So do you have a favorite book or an author?
Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. My God, why did you even ask me that?
Yes.
And I'm going to see it at the Fox. My daughter has bought tickets for
that's
Mother's
great.
Day and her birthday.
Have you seen it before?
I've directed it at Sumter Players,
Okay.
but never at the Fox.
Okay.
No.
That's awesome.
I'm so excited.
That's great. Okay.
I might not come back.
You will. You will. What about as far as coffee or tea? Are you a coffee drinker, tea
I'm
drinker?
a coffee.
Okay. All right. Do you drink it black or with cream or
One
anything?
sweet and low.
Okay.
That's it.
I love it. All right. This might be an interesting question. If you could have dinner with any three people, living or dead, who would it be and why?
All right. One would be Harper Lee.
Okay.
Because she is my very favorite author in all the world. My second one would be Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Because I loved her voice. I mean, her poetry, her everything. And the third one, and you're going to laugh at me.
Okay.
The third person would be Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I'm going to be honest, Abraham Lincoln has always been someone that I just really loved learning about him. And of course, everything he did to further the lives of African Americans at the time just really impressed me.
Yeah, me and my son are reading a book right now called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, okay,
and chapter 1 gives a really great snapshot of some of Abraham's life and how initially when he was growing up, he was very critical of people, but later on he learned how not to be critical to people.
Yeah.
And it was just a really great, just a reminder that we should be encouraging people and not just criticizing people. It was a really great thing. But so it got me thinking, I would really love to sit down with him.
Oh, yeah.
Get a chance to hear his thoughts on that. All right. Are you on vacation? Do you want to go to the beach or the mountain?
Oh, the beach.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to go to the beach.
All right. Dog or cat person or animal person?
Well, I have one cat and I have 7 dogs. So dog.
Okay. All right. What's your go-to comfort food? What do you like to eat?
Oh, I love popcorn.
Nice.
I love macaroni and cheese. Probably I'd go to popcorn all the time.
Yeah, I am.
I don't know why.
Not that I need to be attractive, but I am a very unattractive person when I'm eating popcorn because it's just a fistful of popcorn. It's unnatural. I don't know why I do that. I don't do anything like that with anything else.
Oh, no, me, I just, and I broke my hand teaching school one day. And I remember when I was doing one of my exercises was, because I broke it pretty badly, it was to do this. And the kids at school would, after school, I was working on the yearbook, they'd say, Miss Fuller, eat popcorn. And I'd go, okay. And I'd put it in here and I put it up to my mouth like that, and the popcorn would just go everywhere. And they'd go, Miss Fuller, that is so ungraceful. I was going, that's the only way I know how to eat.
That's right.
And I never just did like this either.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Do you have a favorite hobby or a pastime outside of work?
Well, I read all the time.
Okay.
We swim a lot.
Yeah.
I walk a lot, but I guess my biggest hobby is reading.
Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote or a motto? Be still and know that I am God. Yeah. That's it. That just really sits
That's
there.
it.
Yeah.
I was
we're done.
I was teaching a Sunday school lesson one time. I teach the Sunday school lesson at Maranatha.
Okay.
And the author was saying, break it down. Be still. Be still and know. Be still and know that I'm God. And that just...
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's true.
Yeah.
That's so true. All right. Are you a sweet or savory person when it comes to snacks?
Oh, sweet.
Okay.
That's a downfall. Like I'm just thinking, do I want to go to Scoops before I go home?
That's right. That's right.
Ice cream's oof. Yeah.
All right. Do you have a dream travel destination that you would like to go to?
I would love to go to Ireland one day.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just want to go.
You don't have to have a reason. You
you don't have to have a reason.
Just seems like a good one.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Is there a favorite song that you love to sing to?
Not really. I listen to a lot of contemporary Christian in the car. I listen to a lot of 60s and 70s, but nothing in particular.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. It's weird because we live so close to everything. I barely get a song in half the time. I'm just driving and I'm just already there. All right.
Yeah.
Good to go. So, well, Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, spending a little bit of time with me, getting a chance to get to know you a little bit, get to hear the history of Sumter County and Plains, and looking forward to trying to get connected in this thing in June or July, the same short line.
Please do.
And I look forward to the future of what we get to see, hopefully in Sumter County, and what God wants to do in Sumter County. And so thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. All right, we're good.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Great. You did great. Listen.